So we've had a welter of different presentations. And we're coming to the sort of synthesis of this conference. We've had a series of doctors throughout the meeting, and there's been a focus on how can we link the agriculture and the food systems and people with the medical care system. And we've had, actually it was very interesting, we had some doctors who were presenting in a very coherent way about this is what's been shown and so on. But several other doctors were essentially giving their personal experience. And it became obvious, and there were beautiful surveys that have just recently been done. I think, if I remember correctly, it was here in France, where in fact doctors didn't engage in this food business. And I'm an honorary fellow of the Royal College of General Practitioners in the UK, and we discovered precisely the same thing. Doctors haven't a clue. And when we did it, when the survey was done 20, 30 years ago, the doctors themselves were asked, where do you get your information about food and health? And most of the doctors said, my wife's magazine. Nothing to do with the medical school, but my wife's magazine. And we discovered that actually many of the patients were more knowledgeable than the doctor about the nutritional questions. That's not a criticism of doctors. It's the challenge that they've got, given the huge and extremely complicated and speed of development of this enormous business of medical care. And so I would like to spin it round and say we've had today a series of speakers, but let's bring it back to what we heard this morning. We heard that the Joint Research Centre of Europe has done analyses where they've taken the criteria the WHO have come up with, and they've said we need food-based guidelines. My question is this: why are we in such a mess? Europe has got an enormous burden of disease. We've clearly got it wrong after 50 years of enormous support for the food and health system. And we've got a crisis. And can't you see that if you're a doctor looking at this mess in society, the one thing you can say is, we've got it wrong so far. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? And if in fact the food, for example, is the agriculture, we had a wonderful, Mr. Sauvetre was going crazy because he comes from the sector we've been talking about. And he's under enormous pressure. And we had a ludicrous series of numbers about the millions compared with, was it trillions or just billions from the other food sector? It's completely overwhelming. I've been involved in this, and the Commissioner for Agriculture, more than 25 years ago, turned to me as we sat in a think tank with all industry, who dominate the input to Brussels. And he said, Philip, let's get rid of these guys. All they're doing is looking after themselves. And he wanted to talk about the future of agriculture for Europe. And, it was only 15 years ago, we discovered the fruit and vegetable prices were being increased by subsidies to bury the fruit and vegetables, to increase the price, to give Mediterranean farmers a bigger return. And we've heard about the farming now challenge. So we've got it wrong, and the question is, how do we get it right? And it's not just a question of libertarian paternalism. In other words, we give people a lot of choices. We've been giving people choice all the time. And what we heard, and actually from OECD, we've heard that actually systematic processes involving government work. And we heard from our friend from DG Santé, you've got to have European-wide measures. The Pope can't just go anti-smoking. The whole of Europe's got to go anti-smoking. How are we going to change Europe in terms of the food system? Who's wanting to come and tell me how we do it? Open the discussion. The floor is yours. Microphones are here. I want a revolution, because we've got it wrong. So we've got to have a revolution. Why are you all looking dazed? I mean, you know, I'm 194 and you're only 15. Come on, you. Who's going to go first? Sorry, I can't see. Yes, sir. Oh.
I will give you more figures.
More figures?
More figures, because I think when...
Can you hear clearly?
When we look at the presentation that we had from Mrs. Medico, it's not a... I will be challenging a little bit the presentation. I think there is, when we see the objective, which are to be more societal in the new CAP reform, because you said you were not happy 15 years ago, there is no new reform, so there were an opportunity to maybe change the things. And there's been a first communication, which was a little bit of hope, saying that there will be the societal demand, which include environmental, and which could include health issue. And at the end, we could say that today nothing will change. So we'll continue to do the same. I will not say that the things will be to increase the price by having withdrawals. But when we look today the CAP, fruit and vegetable in perspective of the other. So we have got like an iceberg where we saw the upper part with the budget going to promotion, 30 million, the budget which is going to the school scheme, 100 million. Then there is a few other measures going to support producer organization, a little bit on research and innovation. We don't get to 1 billion euro. The cap...
1 million or billion?
1 billion euro.
Billion.
The cap is 38 billion. So the fruit and vegetable sector get 1 billion out of 38. So if you want to change the things, change the food system, have vouchers for distributing, and I think that will be also for DG Agri an easy tool, because they are looking in the new objective to get measurable action. And when you take, and it's not the fruit sector who talk, it's Barilla with their double pyramid, on the double advantage of fruit and vegetable, high benefit on health and low impact on environment. So this is easy to measure. And I think there is a missed opportunity now with the CAP reform if the things is not changing.
So we've got an input from somebody in production. But we heard, who said it this morning, that actually, was it in 2 weeks or something, sometime soon, the Austrian presidency is holding a summit of sustainable. And did you realize that only 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a crisis production by the climate change people saying we signed the Paris Agreement only a short while ago, and putting it crudely, we've got it all wrong. And by 2030, we've got to have a dramatic change. So I'm sorry, we cannot fiddle along anymore. We're just wasting our time because we need dramatic change. Why? Because in 12 years' time, we have to make huge change. I gave a lecture to students of Europe in Venice a short while ago, and I put up a slide of semi-desert, and it was in Venice. And I said, where do you think this is? And they said, Africa. I said, no, it's Venice in about 20, 30 years. It's coming faster. And wine is now being produced in Britain. This is going to be the vegetable area in the north. The Mediterranean area is going to be semi-arid. What are we going to do about it? And actually, there's a huge problem for the prime ministers and the presidents of Europe. What are we going to tell them? What are we going to tell them? Marianne, what should we tell them?